All right, guys, this is Rick or Rico from Puerto Rico. Welcome to another episode of Visionary Living, the podcast. And I am here with a very awesome special guest today, and his name is Lynn. Lynn, please introduce yourself a little bit for our guests.
Good morning, Rico. My name is Lynn Everard, and I'm an author, writing coach, and speaker, and I'm delighted to be here with you this morning.
Absolutely. And today we have a very interesting topic called Speak Your Truth. And so we're going to speak into, what are we speaking into today?
Well, speaking our truth is a really core competency for living an authentic life. Uh, it gets us out from behind the agendas that we create to protect ourselves, to protect things we think we can't live without, and puts us into a space of really being able to communicate who we are.
Awesome. And so we're just going to play our intro music real quick. Stay tuned for the podcast. So we're back to the Visionary Living podcast with Rico from Puerto Rico and my guest Lynn Everard. And so today we've got that interesting topic of speak your truth. Why don't you get us started? What is it that drives you in terms of speaking your truth? Why does this matter to you at all? Why is it important?
Well, it matters to me because I was born as a product of incest and was actually a secret in the world that I grew up in. And in order to survive in my family, especially with my father, believe that I need to be perfect, silent, and visible.
Wow.
And that means you can't speak your truth. That means you can't speak up to say what needs to be said. And I spent much of my life in that space. And when I started finally getting some coaching, I realized that there was an opportunity to flip the script and change what I was doing and where I was coming from. And speaking my truth became extremely important to me, especially understanding that when we don't speak our truth, and it's not just the big truth of who we are, but it's the truth of when we say yes, when we really want to say no. And many people live in fear of saying what they want or what they don't want, even if it's not, they don't want to go for Chinese for dinner today.
Right? Something even as trivial as dinner, right?
Yes, because it all matters.
That's funny. Holy cow. So wow, that's very powerful, and I am humbled and honored that you're willing to share that vulnerably with us today. And I think that it stands on its own. Like just what you're willing to share is absolutely speaking into speak your truth and everything that you're talking about right now. So what kind of power do you think people could have if they could master speaking your truth?
So once you learn how to speak your truth, you're really not afraid of anything. You have a lot of self-confidence. You know you can speak what you need to say in any situation in life. It also helps protect us from the hidden agendas that we carry when we can't speak our truth, because we live in fear of loss. And that fear shows up in a number of different ways in our lives. We fear the loss of, being abandoned if we speak our truth. There are people that stay in relationships for many years because they simply can't speak where they're at in the relationship. They
Mm.
can't say that this isn't working for me anymore.
And what's interesting about that too is I've got a workshop, successful awareness, and it's all about intimate relationships and sexuality. And a lot of it is really interpersonal skills, like what do you want to create in your relationships, whether that be sexual or intimate or romantic or what have you. And there's an exercise that I put in my workshop too about speaking up, using your voice, and where have you let your voice be stagnant or fall to the floor, or your choice or your options or your ability to impact another person? Where have you let that fall to the floor, and why? So that really like lands for me deep, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's a fascinating topic, and the more we watch ourselves, the more we become aware of what we do in life and the stories that we make up,
Hmm.
where we're protecting ourselves from speaking our truth. But the problem is you're really not protecting yourself. You're just delaying the inevitable.
So speaking to that, what does that mean if you delay the inevitable?
So if you're in any situation with someone and there's a truth that you need to share, but you can't, and then things take their course and you move down the road, you're going to build resentment.
Hmm.
It's almost impossible not to. Even the people that go to enormous sacrifice, all the martyrs and victims in the world, and I
Hmm.
used to be one of them, uh, because you're so desperate to be seen or to help someone or to serve someone, that ultimately it all comes crashing down at some point because you just can't bear the weight of it anymore. And so it's much better to speak your truth as you go, as a truth comes up, because every time you delay speaking your truth, you enter into a space of stories and you
Hmm.
become that much less authentic in how you live your life.
So pretty much what I hear you saying is kind of like be authentic, honest, open, transparent, vulnerable right from the get-go, and just like live our lives from that place only all the time.
Yes, because what I see happening in a lot of relationships is that uh, people get into the relationship through one of several different routes.
Hmm.
But if they don't start off with some level of commitment
Hmm.
of being open and honest, then they get so far down the road in the relationship that suddenly they feel like they've got something that's at risk,
Mm.
something that they could lose. And once we start feeling like there's something that's at risk or something we could lose, our internal programming then moves us into a place of wanting to protect it at all costs.
Yeah, defensiveness. I could totally
Yes,
see that, like resistance against something.
right, to hold on to it no matter what.
Right.
And the minute we do that, we actually stop we're no longer authentic.
Mm.
We're no longer the person that we thought we were when we entered into the relationship. And now imagine the dynamic if you've got two people doing that.
Wow. Yeah.
Two
Like
people,
in one
right?
relationship, like two
Yes,
people that are both withholding the truth, living inauthentically, defending against.
right, right. And then it just becomes this snowball of pain.
It almost becomes like an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, right?
Yes, yeah, we could, because we could, we then it gets really fascinating because we pretend we're doing this for the other person
Right.
when we're really doing it for ourselves.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. It's self-preservation almost.
Yes,
And a lot of what I talk into also is ego, and how sneaky the ego is, and how the ego is defensive. Like like there's two primary thought systems that I like to speak in: love and fear. And fear is primarily rooted in the ego. And so when in order for us to, in order for ego to keep us alive, it has to be defending against something. In order to defend against something, it has to be under attack. And so therefore everything that we experience, see, hear, the ego thought system will filter all of it through what is that supposed to mean? Like, how am I under attack right now, and what do I get to defend in order to survive? Meanwhile, the other thought system's primarily like out of love, and it's as simple as, oh well, yeah, it must mean nothing, and even if it did mean anything, how can I just create love? Right.
right, right. And that ego mechanism also is what takes us into making up stories
Mm.
about things.
Mm-hmm.
So there are events and experiences that we have in our lives which are neutral,
Mm-hmm.
but it's the story we make up about it. And most of the time, the stories we make up are negative
Mm.
because we would rather make up a negative story and feed our subconscious limiting beliefs, then we would actually be in a place of uncertainty. Uncertainty scares us. The ego needs certainty because then it knows it's actually alive and functioning.
Well, what's interesting about that too is what really is certain. Like even when it comes to like let's put on a concert, right? So we're gonna put the investment down, we'll buy the venue, we'll pay for the artists, and we'll start selling tickets. But at that point, it's still just a vision. This is actually perfect for visionary living, because the uncertainty, that's what visionary living is. It's about creating the vision of the end result, seeing it so clearly in your mind's eye, but it's unprecedented. It's not, there's no tangible anything that says that it can happen, that it will happen, nothing to prove or disprove its existence except my own vision. And so just to kind of tie that into what you were saying, do you see kind of how that correlates with you, or what do you want to speak into on that?
Oh, absolutely. The only real certainty we can have is the security that we have within ourselves.
Mm,
Uh, but oftentimes we tie our thoughts, even our visions, we tie to other people, we tie to outside events,
mm,
we look for we look for validation, proof of our worth and our value in things outside of ourselves.
mm-hmm,
So if I got 10 likes on my Facebook post, maybe that's enough for me to think that I'm okay,
mm-hmm.
when it really doesn't matter. And if I got 10 people to sign up for my event, then I can judge myself as to whether 10 is a good number or a bad number, when 10 is just a neutral number.
So it's almost like a subjective interpretation of what's good or bad, or where my thought systems are at, or like justification of what's good and bad. It's almost like we're trying to match up for right and wrong, like what's the appropriate way to live my life or not. Is that kind of what I hear you saying?
Yes,
Or
yes, because and ultimately, until we reach a place within ourselves where we're at peace
uh-huh.
and understand what that peace actually is and are able to experience it, that's really the only time we can then know that all the stuff outside of us can't really bring us peace.
So it's almost like when I get that job that is worth, let's say, 50K that I really wanted, now it's like, oh, now I'm valuable. But as long as I'm seeking that job, I want to isolate, kind of close off. I don't think I'm valuable or worth anything until I'm hitting my goals. I mean, what's interesting is I have this thing called isolation theory. And I spoke into it on the last episode, I'm pretty sure, where there was a whole experiment with mice and stuff. And in that isolation theory, it's almost like when we're not empowered, then we want to hide in shame, or we want to like seclude ourselves. And
Yeah,
it almost kind of sounds like that.
right. Because we're always looking for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
And think about getting a new car.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And maybe you've
Hey, I
had
just got one.
okay. So maybe, so maybe you've had your eye on a car, right? A particular car for 6 months, 12 months, 18, whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
And you finally get the car, and it's really cool, and it smells like a new car inside,
Mm-hmm.
and it's all wonderful. And then 10 minutes later, well, that was nice. What do I want now?
Like
Right?
on to the next, instant gratification.
On to the
Right?
next thing. Right. And so really, one of the ways we can look at that is we get so focused on destinations, right? These little destinations that pop up, things we have to have. But if we're too focused on the destination, we miss the journey. And life is really about a journey. Life is about, we cannot live the journey if we're not present in the present moment, if we're not experiencing now, because the only thing that creates our future is what we do and think and say now.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, probably a very cliche statement, but I just wanted to bring it up because you said that, the now, the only time that exists is now, right? And in that, it's called a present because it truly is a gift.
Yes, absolutely.
To get present is because it's truly a gift to be in that current moment, not in the future, anticipating your future, or in the past, kind of in remembrance or memorial of the past, but staying absolutely present, and it's a gift.
Right. If we'll go back to the car,
Mm-hmm.
the new car situation. If we're in such a rush to get a car picked out, a
Mm-hmm.
deal done,
Mm-hmm.
we've missed the experience of what could show up for us in the journey to getting that car. Because that's really that's how we live our life.
Mm.
Who might we meet in the process
Hmm.
of finding the car? What things might we experience in our lives? What might we discover about ourselves?
And to speak into that, even I totally agree with that, because I noticed the way I live my life is I try to be very present. So like even when I'm on the airplane, I'm like, all right, who's around me? Hey, what's up? And I start to connect and give them a space for people to kind of speak their truth. And a lot of times too, I notice that they stay on the surface and I drive the conversation deep, and I'll get right to the heart of conversations, to the point where they're now thinking like, wow, what is it that I want to create in my life, and what direction am I going, and is this what I want, is this circumstance, or is this power, is this vision, um does that land for you?
Oh, absolutely. But I think at the same time, we get to give people the space to have their own journey and
Mm,
to have their own experience. And because we
mhm,
don't know when we talk to someone the pain that they're in right now, the
mm,
hurt that they've experienced, the disappointment they've experienced in their lives, how they've trusted someone and that trust has somehow been violated.
mm.
There's a million different things that are happening within people. Most of it's subconscious, but it's still driving them.
And I mean, I think everyone can relate to that. If you guys are on watching and you guys can relate to that, maybe you can like it or heart it, so that we can, see that feedback. But I totally, that lands for me. Like, I've been there. I've experienced that before.
Yeah, I mean, we all have our experiences and you know, sometimes people ask me, do you have any rules in your life?
Mm.
And I really just have one rule. I mean, there's lots of sub rules and things, but
Right.
but the one rule that I have is to respect the sacredness of another person's journey.
Uh-huh.
That even if I'm going to, be an interruption for them, that I do it in love. That
Uh-huh.
I do it in a way where I'm not trying to fix them, change them, refocus them, redirect them.
Mhm.
It's simply about uh, getting them to stop whatever they're doing inside and
Mm.
become present in the moment
Mm.
and maybe experience a thought that they hadn't experienced before in
So
a
by
conscious
giving
way.
so by giving them presence, then you giving them the power to choose their own response or emotional interaction with that situation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, absolutely. So in my own life and in the work that I'm doing in the book I have coming out called How Speaking Your Truth Could Save Your Life and How It Saved Mine,
Oh wow.
is actually in helping bring people back to that moment and then taking them through a process. And the formula that I have for my book in terms of where I'd like to help people get
Mhm.
is to start from a place of once you're able to speak your truth, that creates self confidence. And once you have self confidence, that can provide you with freedom.
Mm.
And then freedom gives you the ability to have choices, to be able to operate in your life from choice. And then finally, when you actually have choice and believe that you have choice, you can believe in the possibility of possibility.
Mm.
Because until you do that, you don't really have possibility. You can see things out there for other people, but you can't see them for yourself.
Mm.
So being able to get to this place of choice, of having choice. So for me, choice is very important, not only for myself, but for other people.
Mm.
And I take that back to the circumstances around my conception and being born, that my mother didn't have choice in the act which created me.
Mm.
And so helping people have choice, having choice for myself.
And I want to, because choice, the word keeps popping up a lot, and so I just kind of want to make a distinction too, but between a decision and a choice.
Yes.
And so, the way that I frame it, anyways, is like when it comes to a decision, it's almost like we're picking between options that are available to us. So, for example, if we go into the ice cream store and we see chocolate, we see vanilla, we see strawberry, we see, maybe a vegan one, right?
Right.
And so, based on these options, which would you like? Well, I'm deciding that I want chocolate.
Right.
Now, the way that I hold choice is really like an act of creation. It comes from nothing, And so, if I'm out on a park bench and I'm looking at the sun and I'm like, oh man, I really want chocolate mint ice cream. And then you go to the ice cream shop and they say, hey, do you want vanilla or chocolate? And you say, I want chocolate mint. I actually chose chocolate mint before I even walked into the store. It was a choice from nothing. I created a vision. I walked into it and I had it happen, versus a decision, which is almost like based on the circumstances, based on what is available to me now, which may be limited, in that I have a decision. But to create from nothing or from scratch is more of a choice.
Right. And choice is more of an ongoing practice
Mm,
of being in that space to have choice among possibilities,
mm,
because that's where choice comes from. I mean, it originates in freedom,
mm,
but the way we practice choice is in looking at possibility.
mhm.
And decision, I mean, I look at it this way. Let's talk about marriage.
Okay.
Okay. So deciding to get married is a decision,
Mhm.
but deciding to stay married within that is actually a daily choice.
Hmm.
It's where there's a guy named Brian Reeves that I followed for a number of years, and one of his blogs is called "Choose Her Every Day or Let Her Go."
Hmm.
So people think that marriage is about a piece of paper and a one-time decision,
Right.
but that's how marriages go stale.
That's how the marriage was started, but that's not how a marriage maintains, is what I'm
Right,
hearing you say.
right. So you decide to get into that form of relationship,
Mhm.
but then you actually wake up every morning as a new person.
Mm.
We're all evolving and changing. So every day, you and your partner are waking up as new people
Mhm.
that didn't actually exist yesterday.
Hmm.
So, in order to move your relationship into today, into
Mhm.
the present moment, you get to choose that in the new space of who you are today, who they are today, and what this new day might bring.
That's very powerful that you speak into what you're speaking into right now, and if anyone on who's live with us right now wants to comment on that or give feedback, please do. I'm happy to hear your stories, share your stories, speak your truth. But yeah, no, that's one hell of a topic and conversation right there. Um, hey, let's just shift conversations real quick. I wanted to kind of talk about visionary living. And what does that mean? So like living out of a vision versus like taking whatever life throws at you via circumstance. And if I'm correct, you prepared a story for us today.
Yes. So I've been working on my book for a while, and right now it's actually out at some readers. I'm starting to get it back. I'll be doing some final editing and publishing it in the next, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks,
Hmm.
something like that. But I ran into a space where I actually stopped writing.
Hmm.
And, I wasn't sure why that was happening, but there was just something in me that didn't feel the motivation. So what I ended up doing was I became part of a Think and Grow Rich mastermind group. And within that group, I started to understand some things. And part of what we do in there is we create a statement of desire, kind of like a vision statement.
Okay.
And I changed my vision statement because I started to wake up in the morning and remember what it was like for me to live so much of my life being unable to speak my truth,
Hmm.
and then to really understand how painful that is
Hmm.
for people when they can't speak up, when they can't say what they need to say.
Yeah, it's like a slow suffering almost.
Yes. And so when I started to really, be with that thought every morning, that how could I let another day go by without making some kind of effort that would support people in being able to speak their truth, to be able to be at choice point, to be able to maybe end their suffering.
Mm.
And so that was my vision. So the vision for the book, the vision for all the work, the Speak Your Truth workshop, all those things, the vision is to help people end their suffering.
Awesome.
And so that changed the process. And I said, okay, well, if I'm doing it from that space,
Hmm.
I have to get this done.
Hmm.
I can't think of another day where people are going to have to experience the pain, the debilitating feelings of not being able to speak your truth. I know that story. I lived it for many years.
Hmm.
So it was almost like it was a choice, but not a choice.
Hmm.
It's like, this is how I get to be in service. This is how I get to show up in the world and use my gifts.
Hmm.
And so that propelled me to get the book done.
Right.
Right. And so,
And were there circumstances that kind of came in your way, almost like to block you or stop you, that you had to overcome using your vision?
yes, absolutely, because there's still this ongoing work that I do. I do editing of manuscripts for other people who are writing books. I
Hmm.
coach people into the writing of their books and teach them how to uh, actually get the book written.
Hmm.
And I do the developmental editing for them, with them, take them through the process, and I love that work.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I needed to realize that I don't get to use that as a distraction. from
Mm.
what I'm actually here to do. There's so many good things we can do in life. And I think one of our biggest challenges is to separate out what's good from what's great.
Ah, I like that. That's an interesting one. That's interesting. I'm gonna take that. I just took that. Awesome. And I think I was fortunate because, growing up as a child, I was always the type of kid that would get caught for anything he did. You know what I mean? Like I fart on an elevator and people know who it was, type of thing. You know what I mean? And so I learned at a very young age just to be transparent with my intentions and with my actions. And I live my life like that day to day. Primarily just being as you can ask me anything. I'm an open book. You know what I mean? And I don't live my life out of shame or guilt. And I find that there is a lot of freedom that I have in living my life because I'm so authentic and willing. Like there's a willingness from me to honestly support anyone and anything that they're up to, answer any questions, again, be transparent. So like, I do find I experience that freedom that you're talking about when it comes to speaking your truth. And I definitely reinforce. I want to recommend all of you guys to really take on speaking your truth. And you said you have a book coming out. When is that going to be out?
Probably in the next, uh, I guess, probably looking more like 6 to 8 weeks now.
Okay. Wow, that's really
Uh,
close. Two months. That's really
yeah,
close. That's
yeah,
awesome.
I have to do a little more editing on it myself,
Okay.
and then go from there. But you mentioned shame and guilt, and,
Mhm.
and I really wanted to pick up on that. You noticed this amethyst pendant that I wear,
Yeah, it's really nice. I like that.
and I made up a lot of stories about what it was when I first got it, and it was custom made for me by my friend Hillary Kofsky.
Hey, Hillary, what's up? Shout out to Hillary.
Yeah,
She's
and
awesome.
uh, she saw into what I was doing with it.
Mhm.
So this really represents my healing.
Uh-huh.
And there's two interlocking trees of life on it,
Okay.
and it's because of where I came from and the origin of my life. That was a result of a war between the masculine and the feminine.
Mm,
And so the interlocking trees of life to me represent that bringing the masculine and the feminine back together again,
mm,
both in men and in women.
absolutely.
And it's heavy because when I wear it, it reminds me of my healing. It reminds me of
Mm,
and what I get to do in the world. And one of the things that'll be coming in the future is a nonprofit called the Fellowship of the Violet Flame,
mm,
which is designed to provide encouragement and support for adult children who were conceived in an act of sexual violence, and also to support any child, any adult who was either unwanted, unplanned, or unwelcomed,
oh,
and,
wow.
and including the moms who endured what they endured and still brought a child into the world.
Mm. That's powerful, and I really want to acknowledge you for your outward focus and your ability to be in service like that, using your story to instead of debilitate you, to empower you. And I speak into that all the time because again, if we can change our stories and shift those conversations, then our actions shift too. And so, if you had two kids, brothers, let's say, growing up in the same household and where a victim of abuse, violence, sexual, physical, whatever that looks like. And one brother could let it empower him and go on to make a nonprofit like you're doing, and another one could be a victim to drugs and maybe die young because of drugs or alcohol abuse or whatever, depression, like that. So to really have power over your perspective, over your mental, over the way that we interact or react to the stimuli in our environment, how powerful is it to allow you to have power from your stories versus to steal it away from
Right, right. Well, and you mentioned stories. So I have been doing work in the area of change your story, change your life.
Mm,
And I found that to also be very powerful because we make up stories so quickly. And I'm generating some free events in South Florida, which will ultimately uh, lead into some workshops that I'm developing on how to really teach people how to catch themselves in the act of creating a story and have that awareness to be able to stop that from happening,
mm.
so that because we always run to the negative story, right? We're
Yes,
always,
that's ego.
yes, we're always creating that negative story, but we also get to create positive stories, and it's the positive
Well,
stories that propel us.
I believe that people create both. It's just that they choose to pledge allegiance to the stories that keep them safe.
Yes,
So
yeah,
it's the negative story that says, oh, maybe I shouldn't, and it's the fear of unknown or the uncertainty that you're talking about that then intimidate us away from our choices.
Right. Well, the fascinating thing is that when we match a desire that we have
Hmm.
with emotion,
Hmm.
we really create power in that desire. That's what we learn in the Think and Grow Rich Mastermind group.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so, but the fact that our negative stories draw so much more emotion from us, they're
Mm.
so much more emotionally charged because we're really feeling that stuff deep down inside. But
Right.
the positive stories, until we learn how to put the same amount of emotion into those, yes, we all create positive stories,
Hmm.
but we don't energize them
Mm.
with the emotion.
I really like that. So we have the stories, but we don't energize them. And then you speaking into emotion, because what's interesting is how the mind works, and it trickles down in a structure, and so that first structure is, it starts with what our belief systems, right? And so as we take in information, whether that's someone speaking to us or we see something, it's like external stimuli. We take in that information, we filter it through our belief systems, and our belief system is really just one of the two thought systems, right?
Right.
It's either you're thinking out of fear or you're thinking out of love, and that's the belief system. Out of that belief system come our thoughts. So from the choice of which voice am I going to listen to in my head, now they're going to produce thoughts. So let's say that we choose the egoic voice or voice of fear, the thoughts that would come out um, of my boss saying, "Hey, we need to talk."
Right.
As an example, right? Hey, we need to talk before the end of the day. Come to my office. So now we choose a belief system. Thought A, which is egoic thought system, is going to be like, oh my God, we're getting fired. What did I do? What's going wrong? You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then from the thoughts comes the emotions. So now that we've running stories about, and we're listening to the belief system of ego, and we have those stories running, now it's almost like emotionally it's going to charge us, like you
Right.
said. And
Right.
that emotion, whether if it's positive, it'll have us like move or generate or create, and if it's negative, might have us be more stagnant, maybe not produce anything, right?
Right. If you just look at law of attraction,
Mm-hmm.
okay, it's not just the desire, but it's the vibration, it's the thought process around it, it's the emotion
Mm-hmm.
that we put into it.
Mm-hmm.
So whatever if you plant a garden, whatever you water is going to grow,
Uh-huh, that makes sense.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if we don't water something, it doesn't grow. So it's
Except the weeds, they grow no matter
right.
what.
Well, and then that's where we have processes to take out the weeds. So
Right.
becoming aware of our stories.
But that alone, in a garden, I love that example because I've heard this somewhere, and I think that it's a perfect analogy of, what are we feeding our minds, and are we feeding it the right thing? Because weeds will grow no matter what. So if we're not tending to our garden, if we're not feeding our minds and making sure that we're stimulating ourselves in a powerful way, moving forward, then the weeds will grow. And I want to say that those weeds are like the negative thought systems, or like the limiting belief systems, the egoic narratives, if you will, that hold us back from what it is that we say that we want to create with our vision.
Right. And you mentioned, love versus fear.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the most fascinating things that the ego does
Mm-hmm.
is to actually get us to fear love,
Mm-hmm.
which is, kind of like the ultimate mind bend, right? But deep down inside, we all want love, but we all have some level of fear about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that fear that creates stories about whether love is safe or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so because we want it, but we're just not quite sure that it's safe,
Right. I can see
right?
that.
Because what
Yeah.
happens if we find love and then lose it, right? And the belief then becomes that we can actually lose it when the love is actually within us all along.
Right.
We can't lose what's within us,
That makes sense.
right? But
Yeah.
we project it out onto another person, and we think, well, if we lose them, we've lost love, when in fact we actually haven't. It's just a story we've created.
And that's super powerful, like that statement right there. Because one thing that I talk about in a lot of the work in my teachings is it's that we generate the experiences that we want to experience. We don't find them. Like a lot of people are looking to find love, right? So it's again an external stimuli. It's like, oh, where can I find it? If I like look under this keyboard, hey, I found it.
Right, right.
No, it comes from me. And so when we find a person and we choose that person to be in relationship with, whether it's romantic or business or friendship, whatever, when we see a person that we want to be in relationship with, there's an experience of vulnerability that we get to access in order to have a deep connection with them. Otherwise, you're just acquaintances, right?
Right. And then even go back to the whole idea of destination.
Mm.
If I say I'm going here,
Mm-hmm.
all right, and then I become laser focused, right? We're always talking about commitment and vision and being laser focused on things.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when I get too laser focused, I'm actually missing the journey. I'm
Mm-hmm.
missing the experience of getting to the destination. My belief is that there's only one real destination in life,
Mm-hmm.
and that's death.
Okay.
Okay, everything else is part of the journey. But when we create these false destinations, we take ourselves out of the journey.
Oh, wow. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? I thought that was mind blowing. So I imagine our viewers would think it is too.
So we're taught in our world to have goals,
Okay.
right? So we have a vision, we have goals, we have things that we're trying to achieve. But it is so easy to be laser focused on those things
Mm.
that we miss the experience of going there.
So it's almost like blinders for a horse. Is that
Right,
kind of?
right. The horse doesn't get to enjoy the journey.
Mm.
Okay, the horse is just run the race,
Mm.
get back in your
As
stall.
quickly as we can get to the end result that we're declaring.
Right. Whereas if we understand that the journey itself can be the destination,
Mm.
if you really want to be in the destination, see the journey as the destination.
Mm.
If someone is in such a hurry to get somewhere,
Mm.
they're going to miss all the things they could have seen and experienced on the way to getting there.
Mm.
If someone is in a hurry to get somewhere, they're not going to stop. They're not going to notice the beautiful mountains, the beautiful flowers, the trees, the water, everything that's along the way,
Mm-hmm.
where they could have stopped, taken a picture,
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed the moment, created a memory.
So I have this, not really a theory like it's true, but I have this, I guess, idea that I want to create into either a meditation or a movie or something like that. I really want to do something with this idea. And my idea is, what if at the end of your life, um, heaven, so to speak, is just all of your memories along your lifetime? And what if you just relive your memories? You relive your life constantly, and that's what heaven is. Let's say, when you die, it's just reliving
Mhm.
your life. If you were to go back and account for your memories, did you create majority positive, happy ones, or do we create like miserable ones? Like, would we want to relive the memories of our life or not?
Right. And so we have a choice. We can live life on the hamster wheel,
Mm-hmm.
where we're just running as fast as we can and going nowhere,
Right.
right? Or we can actually take the time to experience everything in life. And you know, even the goals that we have, the vision that we have, it doesn't have to be painful.
Mm.
It doesn't have to involve suffering. It doesn't have to involve, ridiculous effort that just produces sweat but no joy,
Right.
right?
Right.
What if the work we do, even the work I'm doing, where I'm conscious of people that are suffering because they can't speak their truth,
Right.
right? But I'm not approaching that from the standpoint of I'm on some kind of death march that I have to get there,
Right.
right? It's just the fact that it motivates me, it inspires me to continue to do my work. But I don't have this belief that those people are going to all die without what I do, right?
Right.
So I get to do what I
So
do with joy.
it's almost like what you're offering people is not the only way to get to peace.
Right,
It's a
right.
way.
It's a choice. It's
It's a
another
choice.
choice that they get to have. People can't choose things that where the choices don't present themselves.
Mm.
And my job is not to fix anybody or heal anybody or change anybody. It's simply to give them a new choice that they didn't have before.
Offer them a possibility,
Yes,
a new option.
right.
Hmm.
So they can look at their life in a different way and say, gee, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go down this road.
That's cool. I think kind of similar to you, that's what this podcast is designed to be. I'm not putting this podcast to say, oh, whatever we talk about on this podcast is the way to live your life. So make sure you're bad and not bad and wrong. You know what I mean? No, but this is definitely like getting people like you to speak their truth and to share a new perspective that might offer our viewers a sense of power, or a way to see a new possibility for what they are creating in their own lives. You
Absolutely.
know?
Yeah. Like I said, our job's not to fix anybody or
Mhm.
rescue anybody or
Mhm.
save anybody.
And I find that that's actually one pattern that I have, is that I have this need to like save someone, or I have this need to like, it's like FOMO. like a fear of missing out. Like I need to be involved intimately with everything that's going on in the world, or else.
Right, right. But that creates burnout
Yeah, I can see that.
eventually, and then it
Hmm.
creates some level of resentment. So why would you, again, we can ask the question,
Hmm.
why would we want to engage in something that produces resentment and burnout and steals our joy,
Yeah, no,
right?
I wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so now we're in the last 5-10 minutes of our podcast. So I want to kind of start closing up. First of all, I want you to be able to plug anything that you want to plug. So if you want to speak into any of your workshops or your book or when the release date, now's a great time to do any of that.
Okay, terrific. Well, let me start with the Change Your Stories, Change Your Life events. I'm in the process of putting together 3 free events in South Florida, one in Delray, one in Fort Lauderdale, and one in Miami.
Very smart along the
And
coast. Yeah.
yeah, and then what that will lead into is I'm currently writing a one-day workshop
Mm,
called Change Your Stories, Change Your Life. And the goal of the workshop is to help people understand how quickly we make up stories,
mm,
how those stories become so insidious. We talked a little bit about how we put energy into those stories,
mhm,
into those negative stories, and continue to feed our limiting beliefs, and how those stories are sourced in our limiting beliefs, support our limiting beliefs, or can change our limiting beliefs depending upon what the stories are and how much energy we put into them.
mm,
And then we'll be doing some exciting things, different exercises, different ways of looking at things. So the ultimate goal is for the people that go through the workshop to become story busters
mm.
in their own lives, to be able to find the story as it's being created and to stop it before it becomes a real story.
And you kind of told me a little bit about what your intention was. You told me some of the mechanics, and I won't share it with them. We'll keep it a surprise for them. But I just want to say that based on what he was sharing with me, it's extremely powerful work. And I really I can't wait to be at your workshop. I want to see you in action, especially from one workshop facilitator to another. It's always great to learn from other minds and creativity. So thank you for that. And if you guys get the opportunity, or if you see it promoted, I highly recommend seeing what he's up to, and seeing if it's valuable for you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun, and speaking our truth, and the book that's coming out, how speaking your truth could save your life and how it saved mine. All of these things tie in together,
Mm-hmm.
and as we're able to speak our truth, we're not as reliant on stories anymore,
Mm-hmm.
because we get to be in our truth, and we get to move toward living that authentic life,
Mm-hmm.
and being honest with ourselves. And that's one of the places we have the most difficulty. We, most of the time we think about speaking our truth to others.
Mm-hmm.
But the hardest person to speak our truth to is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The person that we lie to the most in our lives is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we might think it's someone else, but it's not. It's ourselves. It's all the things we tell ourselves about ourselves that are simply not true. But then we live our lives as though those things are true.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we speak the truth to ourselves, and our truth has 4 different layers, and I won't go into them now, but once we understand that and how
Mm-hmm.
that works, and are able to speak our truth and know our truth and
Mm-hmm.
discover our truth, that's where it really starts, is discovering our truth, and being open to whatever that truth
So
is.
when do you project that these free workshops will be available?
I believe I'll be starting them in July.
July. Okay, cool. So we just got to follow you and just keep an eye out for
I
them.
have a Change Your Story, Change Your Life page on Facebook,
Okay,
and I have a website, which is lynneverard.com.
cool.
And there'll be more information posted there as well.
Awesome.
And then just, again, to mention that if anyone out there is writing a book, or, needs coaching in writing their book, I've been writing for 25 years, basically
Mm-hmm.
professionally,
Mm-hmm.
much
Mm-hmm.
longer than that in reality. Uh, and I can also do editing and things like that.
Very
So
cool.
whatever someone needs to help them get where they're going. And I used to have a publishing company, so I have publishing experience. So I can also guide the person into getting into a good publishing company, or self-publishing, so they can really get taken care of well.
That's very cool, man. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. And then the book is within 8 weeks. You said
I
about
would
two
say
months.
about 8 weeks.
And
Yeah.
where can we find more information on that as it comes out?
I'll begin to start once I get the book into the final edit process,
Mm,
then I'll start posting more information about it. But
beautiful.
there'll be more information at lynneverard.com.
Awesome. And if you ever need me to help you shout out whatever you're up to, just let me know. I'm happy to share it with, all of
Thank you. I
my
appreciate
network too.
that.
So yeah, just to close out again, this is Visionary Living, the podcast where I speak about living out of your vision, and overcoming any circumstances, obstacles, or even opportunities that may deter you from the ultimate vision that you're very clear about. I actually want to dedicate this podcast to Brenda Rivera. That's my mom who passed away when I was 13. And as we move forward, as I'm supporting people and creating a vision and living out of possibility, I want to bring her name to life and let her live through my podcast as a thank you for bringing me into this world, and for giving me the ability and the freedom to choose. So with that said, if you guys are on iTunes Store and you can download my laugh as a ringtone, I'm always going to be plugging my ringtone as a laugh. I had someone message me recently like, "Hey, I just had it as an alarm to wake up to, and I woke up laughing." Because that is just ridiculous, you know. Also, I have my workshop, Successful Awareness, on July 6th. I have a free 3-hour workshop. It's an introductory workshop to the actual 1-day experience. So if you guys are available, go on Eventbrite. You can type Successful Awareness, SUCCSEXFUL awareness.com. Or you can just look that up on Eventbrite. It's free to sign up for the workshop, but we do need names and email addresses to contact you. So just go through Eventbrite if you're going to be attending. The actual workshop date is July 20th, and that's a 1-day, full-day experience where we talk about intimate relationships, sexuality, romance, all of that. And other than that, if you could subscribe to the podcast, we're going to be doing this every Monday about 7:30 in the morning till 8:30, 9 o'clock. We'll be featuring guests, and we'll be talking about all kinds of interesting stories that people have that they get to share, that speaks into living out of a vision and overcoming circumstance with that. So with all of that said, I want to say thank you deeply for all of you guys who are watching on any of the platforms, whether it's SoundCloud, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Spotify, iTunes podcast. I really appreciate your viewership. It really lights me up to do this kind of work and to bring this information to you, distinctions to you. So thank you. And yeah, I love you all, and have a wonderful day, guys.